Je prends la parole maintenant pour faire le suivi d'une question que j'ai posée le 18 juin dernier sur le processus pour remplacer l'honorable juge Louis Lebel qui prendra sa retraite le 31 novembre prochain. At the time, the Justice Minister responded that there has been, quote, no process undertaken to date, but he encouraged me to, quote, look forward to the future with optimism. I therefore anticipated the government would use the ensuing summer months to begin consultations and get the process underway if not completed. As such, it was particularly alarming to learn upon our return to Parliament in September by way of an order paper question that, in the words of the Minister, the Supreme Court appointment process is, quote, still under reconsideration, and that it remains to be determined how the government will proceed. Today is an especially appropriate day to be raising these issues, Mr. Speaker, because today the Honourable Justice Clément Gascon took his seat on the Supreme Court. I have a great deal of respect for Justice Gascon, but the process by which he was chosen following the Nadon fiasco was a clear regression to a closed, unaccountable, unrepresentative process without an advisory selection panel, without any parliamentary involvement, and without any public participation. In fact, since the Conservatives took over in 2006, the government has been watering down the appointment process that I was proud to initiate as Minister of Justice in 2004. That process, which led to the appointments of the Honourable Justices Rosalie Abel and Louis Chanon, included for the first time a public protocol setting forth the people to be consulted, and an inclusive advisory panel composed of MPs, distinguished members of the legal community, and eminent public persons who evaluated and recommended candidates. The evaluation criteria were made public from the outset, and prior to the appointments being finalized, I took questions as Minister from a parliamentary committee, among other things, how these criteria were met by the nominees. These measures were intended as a first step toward a more inclusive, transparent, and accountable process. Indeed, the committee submitted a report with the recommendations for further improvements, and that report was made public. At that time, 10 years ago, it appeared that all parties agreed on the need for greater transparency, accountability, and inclusiveness in the appointment process. However, the government has since moved starkly in the opposite direction, to the point of that earlier today, in response to a question from the member for Gatineau, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice indicated that the government envisages no role for Parliament in the process to replace Justice Lebel. There are now less than 2 months until Justice Lebel will vacate his seat on the court. Yet, by the Minister's own admission in his response to my order paper questions 3 weeks ago, not only had the process to replace Justice Lebel not been initiated, the government had not even decided what the process would be. I would like to know, Mr. Speaker, whether that remains the case, or whether the government has by now decided on the process, and if it has, what does this process entail, what elements of the process have already occurred, and why has it been kept secret? If, on the other hand, the government has still not decided on the process, what is the cause of the delay, and when will the process to replace Justice Lebel, in fact, begin? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the member opposite is now aware, the appointment to fill the vacancy of the Honourable Justice Fish has been completed, and Mr. Justice Gascon has now taken his position on the top court, and we congratulate him on taking his position there today. The appointment of Mr. Justice Gascon to the Supreme Court of Canada was preceded by broad consultation with Quebec's legal community. These included the Government of Quebec, the province's Chief Justice, and the Chief Justice of the Quebec Superior Court, as well as the Canadian Bar Association, the Barreau de Quebec, and the Barreau de Montreal, and of course the court this court itself, the Supreme Court. This process confirmed Mr. Justice Gascon's reputation as an outstanding jurist whose professional integrity and wealth of legal knowledge and experience would make him an excellent addition to the nation's highest court. It is often noted that one of the strengths of the judiciary in this country is the diversity of experience and skills that the individual judges bring to their tasks. The result is a combination of different but complementary perspectives grounded in a shared devotion to the law and public service, which enriches our courts and our justice system as a whole. This is particularly important in the context of our highest court, which is called upon to address the issues of national concern and to speak with a unique authority in resolving contentious matters from across this country. Over the years, the Supreme Court of Canada has been blessed with a great many brilliant jurists, and the appointment of Mr. Justice Gascon reflects our government's commitment to supporting that proud tradition of legal excellence and merit. Ensuring that Canadians everywhere can have confidence in our highest court and in our justice system as a whole continues to be one of our top priorities. The people of this country expect and deserve no less. There will be no shortage of challenging issues to come in the months and years ahead, but I have no doubt that with the help of Mr. Justice Gascon, The Supreme Court of Canada, with a full complement of judges, will continue to serve the Canadian public with its customary integrity and efficiency. Mr. Speaker, what the honourable member opposite is really getting at is whether or not we will implement a review process for future Supreme Court of Canada appointments. I can say with all certainty that we are reviewing the process, and when a decision has been reached, we will let Canadians know. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Mount Royal.
Mr. Speaker, I would concur with the Parliamentary Secretary that Justice Gascon is a distinguished jurist and there was consultation. However, and this is the main point of my remarks, there was no protocol of who was consulted. There was no establishment of a judicial selection panel. There was no parliamentary review. There was no public engagement. There was no accountability. In fact, with the Prime Minister's office, in response to my order paper question, acknowledged that they, in fact, were the ones who suspended the process. And so, Mr. Speaker, as the Supreme Court is the pillar of our constitutional democracy, the arbiter between federal, provincial, territorial relations, the ultimate guarantor of our constitutional rights, that Supreme Court deserves better. Thus far, the non-existent judicial appointment process prejudices the court, Parliament, the public, and our whole integrity of this process to secure the candidates.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I listened with great interest to the former Minister of Justice, and I'm wondering if he could tell me what all of the following names have in common: Justice Bastarache, Justice Binney, Justice Arbour, Justice Labelle, Justice Deschamps, Justice Fish, Justice Chiron, and Justice Abella. Well, let me help them out, Mr. Speaker. They were all appointed between 1994 and 2005 by Liberal Justice ministers, and none of them appeared before an ad hoc parliamentary committee to discuss their nominations. In the cases of Justice Chiron and Abella, my friend from Mount Royal was the Minister of Justice, and he appeared before an ad hoc parliamentary committee to discuss how and why they were chosen, but the justices themselves did not appear before the committee, Mr. Speaker.
Time for coffee, I came running.